Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another Propagandacast Lehr with me, your host Imperial Dane. The focus of today, T34 76 basics. Yes, indeed, we're looking at the T34 76, the humble medium tank of the Soviet armed forces.
It is ours. We're under attack.
And what a tiny little medium tank it is, or at least comparatively tiny. It is the primary medium tank of the Soviets. It is also the cheapest medium tank in the game, essentially costing only 280 manpower, 85 fuel, which is one of its primary advantages. That is, you can reasonably quickly actually get numerous of them, in particular, say if you've gone for certain industry, in which case, again, you get even more fuel. And that is really already there, one of its main advantages. Again, for example, right now, looking at this player, gentleman here, again, in a few minutes, if he went for one now, he could get another one. If he didn't have to wait 3 minutes, he could get another one out. Again, that is one of the primary advantages. Then there's also one of the things you have to keep in mind about the T34 76. Just like in actual war, it is very much a tank that is about numbers and mass. It is not about quality here, it's about quantity of fire, which again applies to a lot of the Soviet equipment, but in particular the T34 76 alongside the A76 are very much dependent on quality of fire. Quantity again. In fact, against infantry, it works much better than, say, the Panzer IV, which actually has a much harder time hitting infantry, plus the T34 actually fires faster. On the other hand, compared to, say, the Panzer IV, it doesn't do quite as much damage, nor does it have the same ability to penetrate, but overall, you know, it has to come up with something, otherwise, you know, it'd be a bit absurd. But again, you know, numbers, and again, you can easily then overpower the Panzer IV through sheer numbers. Again, in a 1 versus 1 fight, you're generally not going to win. That is very much important here, and our friend here obviously knows that, only pulling back quickly. Of course, doing a bit of damage, which of course isn't impossible, but again, keep in mind, in a one-on-one engagement, your chances are slim. You could probably pull it off depending on your opponent with a bit of luck, but it would certainly be dangerous. So it's rather, again, one of those things you have to keep in mind about the T34. Another one is, in fact, that it also veterans up considerably faster than other armor. In particular, as a medium tank, it does veterans up faster, which again also means you can quicker get to its sort of advantages, further bonuses, which includes a considerable increase in firepower through an increased rate of fire, but also actually a bit of damage. In particular, once that hits veterans, it actually means it fires quite fast, which is actually quite something useful. So again, that's another thing to keep in mind. A lot of players tend to treat this audio expendably, which is a bit unfortunate. Of course, shouldn't be contributed, and again, also then misses the point of some of its advantage bonuses. And of course, the primary method for which people tend to throw away, of course, is the ramming maneuver. And of course, the ramming maneuver is in itself a rather interesting thing. It basically has about a 1 in 60 penetration measure right here, which gives it about, for example, you know, attacking a Panzer IV head-on with a ramming maneuver, guaranteed knockout, because the Panzer IV has in fact 160 armor right on. So of course in that regard, for example, in a 1 versus 1 situation, for example, disabling a German tank of course will give you an advantage in that regard, but again, you also disable your own tank, so it's something again you have to keep in mind of, you have to be careful with. I mean, a lot of players do tend to have a slight, you know, ram, how should I say, reflex, you know, oh, there's something I can ram, bam! And then, of course, they've got the tank disabled without nothing to show for it, because ultimately there's a high % likelihood that your opponent can still get his tank out of there, even in the main gun must go on. Of course, as the armor of the opponent's tank increases, of course, the less likely you are actually of succeeding. So again, there suddenly becomes a bit of a risk. Rewarding, and there's suddenly the risk, you know, you might, you know, end up only disabling your own tank, only briefly stunning the other tank, and, you know, afterwards standing there with a piece of wreck which will easily be experienced for your opponent's tank. What the hell was that? Sorry about that, something popped up all of a sudden, confusing me a bit, but you know, again, ramming, don't just ram in mindlessly. Again, more armor on the opponent's tank means less likely chance of succeeding. For example, naturally 2 Panzer IV is going to be a bit tougher to actually successfully ram. Panther, same. Tiger, same, so on, so on. So again, keep that in mind as well, and generally then, if you want a higher chance of success, you ram the rear where the armor is weaker, though again, that also requires a bit of maneuvering in that regard. You know, again, it's sort of balances itself out a bit nicely, though again it also means as a German player you have to sort of be wary of things, you have to be wary of possibilities where the T34 can suddenly appear from the darkness and charge straight at your armor. And of course, for the third player, then of course means about, you know, figuring out ways you can sneak in a T-34 that way and, you know, hit them from behind. So there are certainly some things there to keep in mind. I mean, it's a rather sometimes tricky maneuver, and again, you know, a lot of people just tend to mindlessly ram, and again, they end up losing a lot of T-34s because that. Sometimes they do it because of sheer desperation, you know. What should they do? Ram it, comrade, ram it! And, you know, they don't quite never get there then beyond that. And generally the best way to do this, again, you know, in numbers, so is you've got several T-34s, then one rams, and preferably from a way that ensures the highest degree of success, depending on the tank in question, and then the rest can sort of peacefully deal with it. Again, I do several times also, you know, they only have one tank, and then they ram it away, and then afterwards the question of course becomes, you know, Boris, yes, Fedorov, how did you think we were supposed to take out the tank afterwards? After, you know, we used only the tank to ram it. I don't know. So again, you know, keep those little things there in mind while utilizing the T-34-76. Again, it is something a lot of people tend to forget about. And of course, also stay cautious of German infantry with Panzerfaust, as they can pretty much save it right away, damaging the engine, thus ensuring it can't ram. And of course, as the Germans, that means of course you usually want some infantry to stand behind us to support. Also note, of course, more scatter on the move, you want your T-34 to shoot on the infantry while standing still. Of course, be careful of the Panzerabwehrkanone. Be careful of any anti-tank guns. I said Jenny won't work out nicely either. In this case, looks like our friend here will be able to get it out of there. Nice pulling back there. Some poor Panzer going to be stuck in the treads though. But again, you know, it can take several shots, but it's not really very likely to bounce the shots unless we're dealing with, say, a German armoured car or something similar. Or a Stuke 3E. So again, you know, that's also something to keep in mind. In some regards durable, but still, it can't bounce a lot of shots. You can take them, but not really shock them off. Blitzing out of there. And again, higher rate of fire than, say, a Panzer IV, which does slightly work to his advantage occasionally. Panzer IV went down. But again, you know, reasonably effective, can take on infantry quite nicely, certainly present a threat to them. And of course, in greater numbers, present a threat to armor, but still infantry as well. Generally, though, I mean, if you are expecting heavier armor than, say, you know, Panzer IV or a Stuke, you know, it generally doesn't become a bad idea to consider additional measures to assist them. Since, according to Soviet armor doctrine, you know, T-34s and such were not really meant to really, you know, engage other tanks and destroy them victoriously in one-to-one combat. Generally, they left other things for that, and thus, you know, it's not a bad idea to follow Soviet doctrine on the matter, since, you know, that did in part help them, I imagine. And again, that involves either getting up field guns, you know, say taking further on, getting a mechanized armor company, or going for something doctrinal. Sort of assist, like, say, marked vehicle. That also helps out reasonably well, and that way can also sort of serve to further augment your T-34's firepower. But again, you know, even then, for example, if you are dealing with a Tiger, I mean, if you have sufficient T-34s, and if you have sufficient, for example, veteran T-34s, you can still take one, but then, you know, it's going to be a bit dangerous. Let's just keep it at that. It is going to be a bit dangerous, and certainly will be a bit dependent on pulling off a good lambing attack. So such things are vital to keep in mind while playing the game, and of course, utilizing your T-34-76. But again, remember, it's not a Panzer. It will never be a Panzer. If you expect it to be a Panzer, you will fail, and you will fail miserably. So don't. It's a T-34, its strengths are numbers, blowing up infantry, and for example, you know, overwhelming tanks through its number, and, you know, through ramming. Again, it's not ever going to single-handedly, you know, hold up a German armoured column or anything. So keep that in mind. I mean, there are a lot of players who do seem to have some unrealistic expectations of the T-34-76, and again, don't. Its strength is, again, you know, that low price of 280 manpower, 85 fuel, which again, if properly utilized, can really cause your opponent a headache when you suddenly get several tanks more than he does. And that way, you know, threaten him not just necessarily just, you know, being able to swarm his tanks, but overall just be able to have an armored presence all across the map. You might say, you know, I don't want to engage him head on, but again, you know, then you can use your tanks to support your infantry and gain minor advantage all over across the map, and of course pull back where then actually decides to send what little armor he has. And again, you know, That is one of the way the two armies tend to play differently. The Soviets generally should and will have more armor. If you're suddenly finding yourself with less armor than the Germans overall, you might be playing wrong, by the way. Just a little thought there. Overall, there's not really any doctrines to really play together with it, except Soviet industry as such. A bit mechanized armor, or mechanized support a bit, you know, guards motor, armored assault abilities, for example, to give you a self-repair or marked vehicle, and Soviet industry, of course, which helps, you know, with giving more fuel and faster armor production. Those things, but there's not necessarily something that will give you new abilities or anything for your T34. At least not that I know of yet, anyways. So those are, of course, some things to consider for your T34-76, some things there to keep in mind while utilizing it. And again, repeat after me, it is not a Panzer, it will never be. It is a Soviet tank, which means it plays by Soviet rules, which is numbers, numbers, numbers. As Comrade Stalin said, quantity has a quality of its own. And no more with us was that true than with the T34. They built a lot of them, they lost a lot of them. Put the two together and you rather figure out why. It was really not on its own an impressive tank, but when working in larger numbers, it suddenly did shine a bit. So keep that in mind while utilizing the T34-76. Be sure to, of course, also properly maintain it. Again, watch the tank repairs or maintenance video for that little tip there. And so on. Again, you know, try to preserve them, trying to gain the veterancy, as in that case they can really dominate your opponent's infantry. And of course, not to forget, as it also possesses this ability, secure mode, which also allows the T-34, just like this T-70, to actually secure points, which can be used to harassment, or basically, you know, to just immediately secure territory after you've forced away your opponent with it. And of course, just again, you know, force your opponent to have to dispatch something bigger than infantry to deal with some sort of harassment. So there's much there, but again, remember also to shift it back if you want to fight the enemy. So, some few thoughts there on the T-34-76, basically the basics, no huge, you know, advanced tactics or anything like that, but just the sheer basics of it, the sheer understanding of it, you know, really what you need to know about the T-34, what you need to know and using it, how not to use it. Again, you know, again, it is not a Panzer. Don't park in front of a Pak 40, a lot of players do tend to do that. Don't park it in front of a Panzer IV, in fact, don't park it in front of any German armor. It will simply lose, unless they add in the Panzer III to the game again, in which case you can actually slug it out with a Panzer III. I'll give you that. But it isn't in the game yet, so don't slug it out with the German armor. It is a losing proposition, and it was not the Soviet armored strength. So keep that in mind. You want to flank them, and you want to overwhelm them, or outmaneuver them. So, there you go. I hope this was a bit educational. I hope this gave you some clarity on the T-34. I hope this gave you some great ideas on how to use it, how not to use it, how to count it, because again, there are some things to remember. And oh, I need to remember pointing out as well, there is a minimum range to ram it, and again, there's a maximum range. And thing is, if you actually keep dodging it, you actually risk your T-34 overheating, thus stalling out in the middle of the opponent, actually become an easy target. So that's also actually something to keep in mind while trying to ram. There are some things where it can actually go wrong as well. And again, you might also encounter your opponent actually getting closer to T-34 to avoid you being able to ram it. That's another thing. So keep that in mind. And again, keep those things in mind as a German to sort of try and avoid some of those things. And again, a good Soviet player will basically try to get several T-34s and then try to attack from several angles, overwhelming a target, being a Pak 40, be it any armor. Hitting it from as many angles, ensuring that the German can't, you know, target down easily, helps a lot. So, there you go. Hope you learned something from this. Hope you're inspired by this video. If you were, subscribe, tell your friends, share it everywhere. If you aren't, well, sorry to hear that. Feel free to, you know, provide some feedback in the comments. Or, of course, also feel free to provide some feedback in the comments if you liked it. This is Imperial Dane saying cheers.